Welcome back to Char and BBQ. My name is Aaron. Today's video, I will be showing you a step-by-step tutorial how to make Texas-style brisket.
Lift off and the clock has started.
So I'm going to show you the step-by-step how-to from the planning the cook, the trim, the rub that you're going to use, the actual cook itself with the wrap closer to the end, and then of course the resting period. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Okay, so I went ahead and pulled out the Select Packer brisket. So this is a Packer brisket. It's cryovac. So first thing that you're going to want to do, that you don't have to do, but I like to do, is put on some nitrile gloves, latex free, powder free. Next thing that you'll need is a sharp knife. I prefer a boning knife to trim my briskets with. Which you can see here, this is a Victorinox. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Got it off of Amazon, it's pretty cheap. Okay, so this is cryovac, so it's in plastic. So what we're gonna have to do is, we're going to have to make sure that we're not going to damage the top of this brisket at all. So kind of a trick that I like to do, if I can, because there's this hard fat right here. Some people call it the hill fat. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to score it a little bit and make a starting place. That way we can go ahead and start cutting this out. I'm going to get this all complete and I'll come back and start the trimming process. The first process I like to do is I like to take some paper towels and go ahead and pat dry the brisket. Okay, for the first part of this trim, I like to go ahead and take off some of this hill fat here. It's not going to really render down. It's a big piece of fat. It's hard, you can tell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my knife right underneath here. And the whole plan with this is you want to make sure that your brisket has a nice even shape. So it doesn't have any, you want to make sure it's smooth, that way there's not any air catching it on when you do start smoking it. Okay, so once you get the heel fat and decal fat trimmed off, I'm now going to start working on the top of the brisket here. And this is the flat section. This is the point if you don't know the two differences. The flat is going to be where the more lean, tender pieces are. The point is where a lot of your more fatty part, the moist part of the brisket is at. So I'm gonna probably make this more closer to not so much of a backyard style where you're really looking for a whole bunch of yield, but I'm trying to shape it where I'm gonna get a nice even smoke all the way across the brisket. And I'm gonna be smoking this brisket fat side up today. I'm smoking it in my Char Griller Competition Pro offset smoker. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna actually flip this over. Part of the point, if you can see here, that just kind of flaps open. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to trim this off. Just make a line, kind of fill. Where that's at. Now you can see here, this is some really good meat, okay? See some marbling in here from the point. Like I said, I want to save this, use it for scraps. Flip this over. So now you see the point here and the flat are exposed, and there's that fat portion there. So there's this section 2 here that you can kind of see is just hanging off. I'm actually going to trim this out as well. Okay, so you can see this difference here. So what I'm actually going to do now, I'm going to actually trim this side of the brisket a little bit more. So a trick is place your knife against the cutting board. I really need to sharpen this knife too. It's been a little while. So what I'm going to do now since I kind of like that side as of right this second, I'm gonna flip this over. What I'm not gonna do is I'm gonna trim along this side edge here. You can see here, I'll lift this up for you, that this is part of like just kind of the carcass that's there. So I'm gonna get some of that trimmed up. So you want about this much fat there. We might trim some of this out, which is kind of what you're gonna work on the fat cap itself. So like I said, this is a select, so it's not a choice or a prime at all. So you're not gonna have as much probably marbled in here. So you wanna try to leave as much fat as possible so you don't have any dry spots in your brisket. Okay, so I hope that kind of gives you a better angle of kind of what I'm talking about, where it's kind of taking shape. You wanna make sure it's nice and smooth. Same thing on this side. So I'll kind of show you what I did on this side a little bit better from this angle. So you can see here, this is the flat, and that's the point. And I still am going to take a little bit of this off here. Basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to make your brisket essentially, in probably better terms, aerodynamic for the smoke. I know that's kind of more of a sciencey fact of it, but it's essentially what you're doing. I'm going to leave the rest of this fat cap on. There's not a huge fat cap on this, so I'm going to leave this. It's kind of what I'm looking for. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and trim at these corners here a little bit. So I'm just going to take my knife, and again, kind of like I did earlier, you're going to place the point of your knife against the board there. I'm just going to round this off. Do the same thing on this side as well, because this is a very, very thin piece of meat there. So what I'm going to do is kind of the same thing. You kind of stretch it out how you want it a little bit, because eventually this part of the brisket would probably just curl up. All right, guys, so I'm gonna call this good. Now that we trimmed our brisket, now is the point where you need to go ahead and figure out what rub you're gonna use. For today's video, I'm actually gonna make my own rub. So I have it here. What this is, I'll kind of put it up closer, is about a 1-to-1 of salt and pepper. This pepper is freshly ground pepper. This next layer here is some granulated garlic. I then add some paprika. You can see it right there. It's gonna add some color. Then I do a little bit of onion powder on top of that paprika. You can't really see too much of it there. I like to do that. There's some little cayenne as well for a little bit of a kick. So then you just have to shake it up. Feel like I'm doing a shake weight. So this is gonna be the final product of your rub. So this one you can tell it's not super red like some rubs you might see out on the market. This is more of a salt and pepper rub, but we are doing brisket. So for today's video, I'm not gonna put any binder on the brisket here. All I'm gonna do is just put the rub itself. Make sure all sides are coated. I will go ahead and let this brisket tack up on this side first with the fat side down before we flip it. I went ahead and let that other side tack up. We're gonna go ahead and season, just sprinkle it all across this fat cap. We're also gonna let this side tack up, wait for the smoker to get up to temp, and then we'll go ahead and throw it on here shortly. All right, guys, I'm checking in. It's been about 4 hours now. We're at the 4-hour mark. We're at about 250. We're gonna look at the brisket. So this is what it looks like right now. So I do have a water pan set up, and I've been spritzing with water about every 30 minutes. Just giving you all an update real quick, and we'll come back once I am liking where the bark is set. Alright, so it is now 3 p.m. This is the 9-hour mark, and this is what the brisket looks like. The bark is pretty much set how I want it today. There is some moisture pockets that were forming up here, and I was just patting them dry with some paper towels, so the bark isn't set as great there or here. There's a couple of little spots, but I'm gonna go and pull it. Okay, so the brisket has been cooking for 10 hours now. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna show you how I wrap my brisket in butcher paper. So what I like to do is I take 2 sheets of butcher paper, since I don't have super wide sheets of butcher paper, and I like to spray some moisture all the way up and down. Basically what this is going to do is it lets both of these pieces join together. I'm also going to spray some here on this side to help with the brisket. You're going to take your brisket, set it in the middle there. You don't want it to fold over completely, but I guess I should say I like to have it where it kind of comes to the edge of the brisket. I like to fold this over here. What you're wanting to do is, I kind of treat it like wrapping a Christmas present in a way. So you can tuck this underneath, like so. So this is kind of how it's going to look all the way around. Now there is this little section here. Now what I've seen some people do is they like to actually tuck that part under a little bit to expose that point meat. So I'm just going to take this brisket and I'm just going to place it on this pan here. And for today's video, since BTUs are BTUs, as Harry Sue says, I'm actually just going to finish this brisket off in the oven. Here's the final product of the brisket after we let it rest for about an hour and a half in the cooler, still wrapped in some towels. So like I said before, there was a little bit of a moisture pocket right here. So this part is a little bit wet. The rest of it, the bark does look really, really good, especially on the sides. So I mean, sometimes this happens. I should have put a piece of wood chunk underneath the brisket, so definitely learn from my mistakes. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and cut it. And I'm gonna cut it kind of on this side, kind of where the point and the flat meet. We'll turn this around. Look at that brisket. How's that look, guys? Is that nice and juicy or what? All right, so I'm gonna try a piece of this flat and a little bit of the point there as well that was sitting on top. Try some of this point meat. Oh my goodness, that's so good. That fat's definitely nice and rendered down. It's nice and buttery. That's gonna get on some breakfast tacos. This was Texas style brisket. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any other suggestions, go ahead and comment them down below. Also, do not forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.